Oh, hello there, Mr.
We're
Jeff.
we're back. It's
We
Friday. We're back.
we're live on air, AWS on air, the weekly show where we talk about some of the latest and greatest service announcements and features and stuff that folks have been working on here at AWS, right from the people who have developed them. My name is Todd Fortier. I am a senior solutions architect here at AWS, where I focus on developing solutions for the AWS Solutions Library. If you don't know what that is, head over to aws.amazon.com/solutions and check it out. We got a bunch of really cool stuff on there. And I'm joined by one of my favorites. I shouldn't say that, co-host.
No, I'm your favorite. Come on, dude.
Yeah, that's true. Jeff and I actually have a history before this show. Jeff was a mentor of mine for some of the work that I've done here at AWS. And I've always really appreciated his guidance and his insight and his help. So I love getting the host with you, Jeff. This is cool.
Yeah, hey everyone, my name is Jeff Marushak. I'm a senior solutions architect, just like Todd, but I'm in our public sector organization and I'm on our Department of Defense Air Force team. So when people ask me, what do I do for AWS? I help the Air Force with cloud computing, and it's a really fun and exciting job. And what we do this show, as Todd mentioned, every Friday. And what's neat is that, I always say this, it's noon over in the Pacific time zone. So everyone over in Seattle, California, this is a good time to take a Friday lunch break, or if you're eating your lunch, a good something to have on in the background to hear what's new with AWS, see some cool demos. But me and Todd, we're in the Midwest. I'm in Cleveland. Todd, you're just outside of Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and so people from Pittsburgh like being associated with the Midwest. I think I've had this debate with my wife a number of times. I think they consider themselves East Coasters, but I'm still having that debate.
Well, so it's 3:00 for us. So
the timing is right. Yeah, that's right.
It's a cool thing because what happens Fridays afternoons? We kind of start to wind down and get ready. So on the East Coast, it makes sense for like an afternoon of just hearing what's new, again, seeing some demos. And if you're looking for something to do to pass those last few hours on a Friday afternoon, tune in every Friday this time and to hear AWS on air. And like I said, here's some cool new features and demos every week. And Todd, it's a pleasure hosting with you. I haven't hosted for a couple months, but I'm back. I had some availability today. And yeah, thanks for having me. And we see some comments being shared. So everyone, feel free to comment. Tell us where you're from. Tell us what you're doing this Friday and what you're looking forward to. And we'll try to, as we talk to our hosts or our guests and show our demos, if you have questions about what's being talked about, feel free to drop a comment and we'll see if we can get that answered for you.
That's right, Jeff. It's been a while. I know you've been a busy person. I've seen you traveling all over the place. You've been speaking at a number of conferences, talking about generative AI. Yeah, you've been a busy guy.
Well, what's funny is that Reinforce was this week, and a lot of times, a lot of the AWS OnAir hosts get to go to Reinforce. I didn't get to go. I don't think you were there. But what I did yesterday was there was the Midwest, the AWS Midwest user community kind of get together. A bunch of the Midwest. That's why I was saying Midwest earlier. all the Midwest AWS user groups, Cleveland, Chicago, Columbus. Every year they have one big community day somewhere in the Midwest. And yesterday it was in Columbus, Ohio, and I got chosen to speak. I did a quick session on retrieval augmented generation, which is RAG and one of the most really popular kind of generative AI topics. And we've talked about it on this show quite a number of times. And my session was it wasn't very technical. It was just, how does RAG really work? And to talk about thinking about context and prompt engineering and what RAG does to do that. And it's really a 100 level session because people think generative AI. It's really complicated. But I kind of broke things down in regular language to get people thinking exactly how it works. So it was fun. There was about 50 people in my session. We had a great time, a lot of laughs. And that's where I was yesterday in Columbus, and I didn't get to make it to Readforce.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, we've talked about that a number of times. We talked about generative AI on our show. And if you're interested in hearing some of what we've talked about on this show in terms of generative AI, you can go to twitch.tv/AWS OnAir, and you can see all the recordings from our past shows. And you can see recordings from our other shows. Like, what other shows might folks see on our Twitch stream, Mr. Jeff?
Yeah, so a lot of our other hosts have their own personal shows. So we have Under the Hood. It's more of like a compute type of show with art. And Jillian, our good friend Jillian, she's a startup solutions architect. She has a show called Startups where she talks to a lot of startups. Nonetheless, we all know A.M. Grobny. He does his game day shows, so where they actually kind of play through some game days. Kyle, our favorite security host, has Lockdown, a security-focused show, and Data-Driven Data Drive. And I'm not sure who hosts Data Drive.
Data Drive, it's a new show. We just launched this year, yeah.
Okay, cool. So tune in for that as well. I'm not sure what day that is. But then also, we have a show all about sports and how AWS and sports, AWS helps sports and all sorts of new sports technology that AWS is helping out with. And that's one of our producers and also co-host, Nick. He hosts that show. So something for you every day of the week with AWS OnAir.
Yeah, that's what by far one of my favorite shows is the sports show. I'm a big sports fan. This is one of my favorite times of the years. We got the NBA finals. We have the NHL finals. I was up late last night watching Edmonton and Florida play. So it's exciting. Even though those aren't my teams, I just love watching it. So I like to tune in that sports show. I know we have some NHL content on there, and Nick does a great job of breaking down some of the AWS tech in that. But today we are talking about what Amazon location services, something that I have a little familiarity with. Usually I come on the show and I'm like, I don't know what this service is. There's so much at AWS. There's no way.
It's funny. You had mentioned I've kind of helped you be one of your mentors, and you just kind of did a little micro project including location services. So this is going to be a good segment, but this is a new feature that Anand and Zach want to talk about. So yeah, I'm excited to learn more.
Yeah. Hello. Hey, welcome back to AWS OnAir. It's our first segment of the day today on Friday. We've got Zach and we've got Anand. Zach, why don't you start? Introduce yourself. What do you do here at AWS? And then we'll go to Anand.
Yeah, Zach Elliott. I'm a senior location specialist SA here at AWS. I've been here almost 5 years. And I am, if we're speaking about the Midwest, I'm from Kansas City. So
that's real Midwest. That is, yeah.
In the hard Midwest, we're talking about sports fans. We got the Chiefs here. We got some, talk about Friday and might go hit up some barbecue later. So if you notice a little bit of Kansas City flair in the demo, you'll understand why.
They say all railroads go through Kansas City. Wait, no, that's not a saying. Something about that.
Yeah.
And Anand, how about you? Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us what you do.
Hey, folks. Anand Vijayan. I'm a senior product manager with the Amazon Location Service team. I'm based in Austin, Texas, so I'm a little undecided on where that exactly classifies as, but call it the South, call it anything. But yeah, happy to be here. Happy to talk about Amazon Location Service and some cool new stuff we launched recently.
Cool. Hey, Anand, so for folks who aren't familiar with Amazon Location Services, why don't you get a high-level view? What are we talking about? What's the service we're operating in here?
Yeah, totally. I'm going to bring up my screen here and share a couple of things, and what better way than just go dive into the console directly. Yeah, so Amazon Location Service, it's a service that's been around a couple of years now. And mainly, as it says here, it helps customers add location data into their applications. So effectively, what that means is it lets customers do these 5 things. So it can range anywhere from, hey, I have a bunch of data, I want to spatially represent it on a map, or I want to search for point of interest or addresses based on a set of addresses or geocoding information that I might have. Then there's also route calculation where I can do things like find me the best way to go from point A to point B, and do that on a truck where there's a certain height barrier I need to care about or a weight restriction I need to care about. So we have a lot of logistics and delivery customers that use that for. And then there's tracking and geofencing, which is probably what the meat of what we are going to cover today, where there's the ability to create geofences and associate trackers to them, where we can say things like, if there's a predefined area, let's trigger some workflows based on what movements we see there. So I'm happy to talk about some of the new releases, but it might make sense to just talk through what Amazon Location Service covers overall. So customers have access to this today, where when you have access to the AWS console, you get to go through this interactive utility called the Explorer, and over there, customers can do a bunch of things like look at a number of skins with map tiles and visualizations. There's also the ability to search for places. So it suggests a bunch of places, like I've just searched for something here. There's routing, as I mentioned, but I'm going to hone in on geofencing and tracking specifically. So as an example, customers can define geofences as polygons or as circles. So in this case, I'll just show something very, very quick just to kind of demonstrate what it does. So I can click on a point here, draw a geofence, and what it does is it auto-generates code, but it allowed me to create a geofence with a 151 meter radius here. And against that geofence, I can do things like track a moving location. So it can be something like a moving mobile device or an IoT device, or anything that really has the ability to beacon location over, can be orchestrated using a geofence architecture. So in this case, what I'm going to do real quick is simulate this movement of a truck. So I'm going to click through here, and as the truck is moving, it represents it over here. But when I enter the geofence, it triggers a geofence event, where what the service is really doing under the hood is it is talking to AWS Event Bridge, which is an event bus service. And that can then talk to things like analytics workflows or notifications and things like that. So this is kind of where customers use it for things like the ride share experience, where your ride is approaching or your order is approaching, that sort of thing. Same thing from an exit perspective, where customers can really orchestrate a certain workflow to trigger when there's entry and exit events that happen. I want to talk about what specifically we launched recently, but I want to just pause there. Just wanted to demonstrate that at a high level.
Yeah, no, I liked how you talked about entry and exit, because I think most people, when they hear the term geofence, at least I do, I think of, we're setting a boundary and we don't want something to leave, or we want to be an alarm when something leaves. And so any drone pilots out there, you will set up a geofence to make sure my drone doesn't fly away. But it is interesting to think, well, that can have a lot of usage for being notified when something comes into a geofence. So yeah, I appreciated that explanation.
Yeah, and I kind of want to hear from our audience as well. Have you used locations or Amazon Location Services? Is this something that would maybe be applicable to something you're working on? One of the things I really love about Amazon Location Services is all of its deep integration into some of the other services that we use at AWS, and the SDKs that are provided for Amazon Location Services. I was a former developer. Oftentimes, I'd have customers want to map something, and that used to be really hard to do. I don't want to date myself too much, but now I've used some of the more recent SDKs for Amazon Location Services, and it's really simple, and being able to change the style of the map and track different assets and define geofences and parameters. So that's one of the things I really like about this service. But on what else can folks do with this before we get into the specific focus of this demo?
Yeah, absolutely. And just going back to what Jeff mentioned earlier, one of the common use cases for that exit event is where customers want to know where, let's say, expensive pieces of equipment are. So a common use case is where in the mining space, each heavy machinery, equipment, or vehicle can be fitted with a simple IoT device, which can then beacon out its location. And the moment that location shows that it is exiting a given area, there can be a notification triggered through Amazon Simple Notification Service or things of that nature. So customers use it for all kinds of stuff. But this is where I want to go back to talking about a couple of additional capabilities we launched recently. And the meat of what we wanted to cover today was really the enhanced location integrity set of features, where customers have been doing this for a while, where what you're looking at is the ability to do enter and exit events, where when something happens, you have the ability to trigger a workflow. But then what customers told us about a year or so ago is they want additional control and flexibility, where they want the ability to say things like, I want to anticipate the movement of this asset or this vehicle in my fleet and trigger actions based on that anticipated movement. So things like, I want to know when this particular geofence will be breached or when something is about to enter or exit a geofence. And that's one piece. The other piece that customers said is, I want to know at the high degree of authenticity whether a location that is advertised is real or not. So there's a lot of potential for location-based fraud, or the potential for someone using a VPN and claiming to be somewhere else, gathering coupons that are only accessible in a certain location. So customers want to be able to detect and deter location-based fraud. So to address that, we launched this enhanced location integrity suite of features, which really breaks down into two things. One is the ability to do what's called forecasting geofence events, where in addition to triggering entry and exit, customers can now forecast a geofence event where they can specify a speed and a time horizon and say, I have a moving asset that is moving at a particular speed. I want to know when this asset is about to reach this particular geofence. And it could be something as, go ahead.
Well, no, I imagine we're going to get into that a little bit into the demo, right? Why don't we bring Zach's demo up, and then we can start talking, getting deeper into some of the features of it as we see it in action. I think that's a good way to go about it. Sorry to cut you off, Anand. Go ahead.
No, just to finish that thought, I mean, we launched a couple of APIs. One was the forecast geofence events. The other was the verified device position, which is really the ability to tell whether a location is where it claims to be, and the ability to anticipate. And we're going to look at Zach's demo where we can demonstrate through that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Anand. So we're going to get into the demo now, and we're going to show both of the API and both the APIs and their functionalities through this demo. So what we've done is we've set up a very simple asset tracking demo. And this demo is going to take advantage of the forecast geofence event API as well as the verified device position API. So first things first is we have to actually define our geofences. We offer a couple of different ways to do this. The first is this map will allow me to simply draw a geofence on the map using a couple points. So now I have a curbside pickup geofence. And then to Todd's point about the APIs earlier, we do have our full suite of SDKs, including the ability to add a geofence programmatically. So we can also add a geofence using the AWS command line or any other AWS APIs and language of your choosing. So if you have a collection of, say, 10,000 stores that you want to create geofences for, you can easily iterate through those and create all those geofences programmatically. You don't have to sit there and draw out a bunch of points on a map for every store. So if I go back to my geofences here, you can now see that we have a geofence around the store. And we also have a geofence around the curbside pickup area. So as it may be a little bit obvious, we are talking about curbside pickup here, but there are other applications outside of retail. One of the other use cases where we see a lot of value with Amazon location service tracking and geofencing is transportation and logistics. We actually have workshops available for asset tracking, using asset tracking devices that could be attached to semi-trailers or trains or anything else that might be moving, and be alerted when those devices enter or exit a geofence. Now with forecast geofence events, we can get even more granular and say, okay, well, I know that this truck or this train is going to be at the depot or the distribution center in 10 minutes. So we need to make sure that we have its shipment ready. So in order to demonstrate the forecast geofence events, I'm going to simulate a user journey. And when we talk about user journey, in this case, it's a user journey of sales, but it's also user journey in the literal sense of we're going to show somebody traveling down the road. So I'm going to simulate a couple different device positions on the map using our API. So let me turn this on here. I should have done that. There we go. So I'm going to simulate a user that is traveling down the road using our API. And so now you see we have a point on the map, and you see we have some information about the geofence proximity. So in this case, we could take this value and say, okay, this user is 7.3 roughly kilometers from our curbside pickup geofence. They might be on their way to pick up their order, or they might not be. Let's keep an eye on this user. And if they start getting closer, then we'll know, hey, they're coming to pick up their order. Let's go ahead and get it ready. So I'm going to simulate 2 more geofence events, or 2 more location update events. I'm sorry.
So when you say simulate, you're in a Cloud9 environment. You're acting as if that is an IoT device that is actually sending its location data.
Exactly.
But you're doing that manually for the sake of the demo, because
Exactly.
we don't actually have assets out in the field that we're tracking for this.
Ideally, this would be a mobile app. Pretty much. I mean, I can't tell you how many retail mobile apps I have on my phone for various stores. And that is ideally what's going to be tracking my location. So ideally, that app is going to be sending these updates to the back end of the store's infrastructure to then tell the retailer, hey, this person is on their way. So in this case, we're now 0.072 kilometers. We're pulling in the parking lot. And so now that store can say, look, this person's in the parking lot. We need to have their order at the door ready because they are effectively here. And for this last location update, I want you to watch the top right of the screen of this map right after I enter this, because the user is going to now enter the geofence. So we now sent a notification via Amazon Event Bridge that this user has entered the geofenced area, and they're now here ready to accept their order.
Zach, what a cool feature, not just for the store to be productive and anticipate, but for the customer. I know my experience as I've gone to pick up stuff from stores, it would be great if they knew I was on my way and I didn't have to sit around waiting in a parking lot in the pickup lane saying, okay, where's my order?
I'll take that another step.
Great win.
I'll take that another step. I've ordered food from fast food restaurants that say, all right, come on over and let us know you're here, by then having to pick up my phone again in my car and hitting a button saying
all
I'm
the
here.
time.
Yeah, you shouldn't do that while you're driving, Jeff. That's just a safety concern.
Yeah, exactly. I can't tell you how many times that I have gone to a location and the food or the item is not ready yet because they just know that I'm there, not that I'm on my way. And this is a great way, even if the user doesn't say they're on their way explicitly, if the app is casually or in the background checking their location, then they can get that and say, okay, well, you're getting closer to the store. We might want to start getting your order ready. Alternatively, something else we need to think about, even if there's not an order in progress, what about geo-marketing? If you enter in a geofence around a store, say you set a geofence that's like 500 feet or 1,000 feet around a store, if a user enters that geofence or gets close to that geofence, then you could say, hey, here's a 10% coupon, let's bring you in the store. So there's numerous applications for this forecast geofence events API, and we hope to see customers start using it in ways to help their own customers with enhancing the experience through these geofences and through these trackers.
Yeah, Zach, that's really tons of use case, and you really got my kind of creative juices flowing. Now I'm thinking through it, but we only have just a few minutes left in this portion of the segment, so I want to make sure that you get to like everything you want to get to. Sure. Do you have anything else for us?
Yeah, I've got one more super quick demo, which is the second piece that Anand talked about, which is the verify device position API. So this allows a retailer or anybody who wants to combat location-based fraud to understand where their customers actually are. So how this works is in this command, and I'm not going to go through every bit of this command, the command sends the location that the device is telling it it's at, which could be false. It could be a GPS app that's emulating. But what it also does is it sends information about Wi-Fi access points as well as LTE networks and IP addresses. So those things that are generally not able to be spoofed, it sends those and then uses IoT core device location in the background to actually resolve a location. So with this, my inferred state, if you notice, there's a deviation distance. That deviation distance is 2,400 kilometers from my real location, because those Wi-Fi access points I provided are from the spheres in Seattle. So I told the app I was in Kansas City, but in reality, I'm in Seattle because my phone is picking up the Wi-Fi signals from Seattle. And so that's what verified device position enables our customers to do, is understand where their customers actually are and say, okay, now that we know that you are 2,400 kilometers from where you're supposed to be, we're going to do something about it, whether that's not letting them check in to a particular application or not letting them do a particular action. This allows them to trigger that logic in their workflow to understand where their customers actually are and understand if that customer may be spoofing their location for some reason.
Very cool. So that, and you use the API in the background and to verify device location. It's a way to detect that. Hey, Zach, this is really cool. I just want to wrap up with one question. If customers want to learn more about these new features, where would they go to do that? Do we have code available? Where documentation? Where might they check out first?
Anand, do you want to take that?
Yeah. So we will link a couple of things in the description here, but we have a blog post that covers this exact use case where we've defined the architecture and the code associated with it. We will be publishing sample apps as we go forward, but we'll also link the dev guide where we can get to the forecast geofence events API, and from there, customers can build out that entire workflow. So that would be the place to go.
Cool. Very cool. Well, like Jeff mentioned earlier in the show, I just got done completing an IoT device tracking project. So I'm kind of eager to take what I just learned today and go test it out in that application and maybe even help customers more. But Zach, Anand, thank you so much for coming on and showing us the new verified device tracking location services. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Yeah, Todd, that was very timely because, like I said, we've just been talking about location services the last couple of weeks with you and Jordan. So really cool stuff. For our listeners, I saw some people chime in to where they're tuning in from. I saw someone from Chile. A lot of folks liking the idea of Robert Tables is like, where's my order? Dude, where's your order? Et cetera. So we can... And always, like, I know I experienced it at the airport going to rent a car. Your app for your car rental company will know when you land and know, okay, hey, this is where you go to get your rental car, something like that.
Yeah,
so
well, I can tell you what I need this for. For viewers who may have seen me host before, they know, and I bring this up a lot. I have a lot of chickens on my property, 260 plus chickens. We're raising eggs, and one of the challenges we're having lately is those chickens keep getting out of the actual fence that I've created. I need a geofence to tell me and predict when those chickens are going to get out of there. So maybe that's a project I could work on next.
Well, yeah, think about it, because if there's something like gnawing at a fence or really paying a lot of attention to one particular point on the physical fence, maybe some AI to determine, we think that this one might be trying to make a hole through it or something like that.
That's right. That'd be cool. Hey, so we've got a survey. We want folks. Jeff, why don't you tell them about the survey? My computer's acting up a little weird here.
Yeah, this is a quick 5-minute survey, and if our producer can bring up the link to it, we invite all of our listeners to take the survey to tell us what you think about the content of AWS OnAir, what you like, what you don't like. And I think, Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the first 50 viewers to do the survey they're going to get a coupon for $10 in AWS credit. So there's a little bit in it for you too. But we are design this show around what we feel our customers would like to hear about. So this is your chance to maybe make some requests and tell us what you're interested in, and maybe tell us, hey, you know what? I don't like this part of the show, or I love this part of the show. Probably the Jeff Barr segment, but either way,
no.
Take this segment and let us know what you think.
I've made it my personal goal to try to break a record. I think we had a couple hundred responses at the top. I think we can get more than that. So let's try to break the record on the surveys and make our producers read them all weekend long. That's been my continuous number one goal as a host on this show.
Yeah, if we can just have those survey results come in like a freight train, that would be sweet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, Jeff, so I've getting this kind of notification about NVIDIA NIM. Kind of curious, what is NVIDIA NIM? I think it's our sponsor today.
Yeah, so the NVIDIA CEO, Jensen Huang, at their GTC conference, they announced NIM, N-I-M, which is part of NVIDIA's AI enterprise. It's a set of easy-to-use microservices designed to speed up generative AI deployment in enterprises. So by supporting a wide range of AI models, including all of the NVIDIA AI Foundation and custom models, it ensures seamless, scalable AI inferencing on-premise or in the cloud. But it's all leveraging industry standard APIs. So what's cool about this is that you can deploy anywhere and maintain control of your AI applications and data. And you can streamline your AI application development with industry standard API tools tailored for enterprise environments. So again, this is NVIDIA NIM, N-I-M. It's part of their NVIDIA AI enterprise. It also comes with pre-built containers with the latest generative AI models, offering you a diverse range of options and flexibility right out of the gate, because there's no one model to rule them all. And part of what me and you, Todd, talk about a lot of time with customers is we want to evangelize using the right tool for the right job. So this helps out there.
That's right. And to get started, users can experience the accelerated generative AI models on the API catalog. So when you're ready to deploy, you can export models with NVIDIA NIM, which is included with the NVIDIA AI Enterprise license, and you can run it anywhere, giving them ownership of their customizations and full control over their IP and AI applications. So what does that mean for you, the audience? That means you can go to the AWS Marketplace, download it, try it, and take it into production and see if it's the right tool for you. So that's NVIDIA NIM. And big thanks to them for being our sponsor today. But we're not done yet, Jeff. We've got another segment before we bring on the legendary Jeff Barr. Should we go ahead and bring on our next guest and get right into it?
Let's bring it in, producers.
Welcome back. Let's give a huge welcome to our next guest, Neha. Neha, thanks for joining us today on the AWS OnAir show. Go ahead and introduce yourself and let us know what you do here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Todd and Jeff. Hi, everyone. I'm Neha Singh. I work as Senior Product Manager in AWS, specifically for a service called Audit Manager. Majority of my time in AWS goes in talking to customers in the compliance and audit space, trying to understand their pain points and trying to find opportunities on how to simplify this space and automate more and more. I'm joining in from Seattle, Washington, where it's bright and sunny. And I'm specifically mentioning this because we don't get to say that very often.
That's true. Hey, that's true. I come from a very cloudy place, and so I can feel that. So that's a good thing. Neha, you kind of said something that I don't really think about a lot, but I know in past roles it kind of makes people clam up a little bit. Audits and compliance, and that's kind of those are scary terms sometimes. But we have a service just for that, Audit Manager. What is Audit Manager and how does it help customers?
Yes. So Audit Manager, as I said, is a service to help you simplify your audit and compliance. The kind of customers that Audit Manager targets, or the customer segment, think of any organization that works in a a very regulated environment like financial sectors or healthcare, they have to comply with different compliance requirements, be it PCI, be it HIPAA, be it NIST or CIS. When I talk to customers, or for anyone who has ever been part of audit in their lifetime, can tell you how much painful it is. When I talk to the customers, I've literally heard them telling me that, they take thousands of screenshots just to show it or present it to the auditor when it's the time of audit. And we are trying to solve exactly that screenshot problem by automating the evidence collection across customers' usage on AWS and presenting them audit-ready reports. So any evidence that audit manager collects on AWS basically comes with a verifiable provenance that customers can simply take it in front of their auditors and show that it's not been tampered with. So we are trying to save their time and effort.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, you mentioned PCI, so that's the payment card industry.
Yes.
So anyone who is processing any sort of credit card numbers has to be part of the PCI accreditation, which means audits. I have been through that. And Neha, I like the idea of trying to save time, because if you don't know, I'm not saying you, Neha, but for our listeners, if you don't know, if you've never been through this, there are whole organizations in companies that are responsible for preparing for these audits. And when one audit is done 1 year, they immediately start preparing for the next audit. And that means collecting that evidence that Neha was talking about. And that takes a long time. And it's not just those people that are collecting that evidence, it's each environment. So I was a VMware admin, so the VMware team had their own session with the auditor. I was responsible for collecting all of the content from my area. The DBAs had to do it for all the database stuff. The networking guys had to do it for all the. So the more we can automate that evidence gathering, that took months. And if we can save time with that, that's a huge win for everyone involved.
Neha, what are some of the ways that we do that in Audit Manager? I think you said something about common controls. What's a control and what makes it common?
Yes. So a control, you can think of it as any requirement. So for example, as Jeff mentioned, payment card industry, if an organization who's in the financial sector has to adhere to PCI compliance, they will have to look at a PCI framework that is provided by the organization. And within that framework, there will be a set of controls, basically requirements. One of the requirement could be that, wherever you are storing the customer data, that data store should be encrypted and nobody should have access to it, or only a specific people should have access to it. So auditor will come and tell you that, show me the evidence around it. Now, what is common control? That's a good question. So we launched, I think, a week and a half back, the very first common control library in Audit Manager. Basically, a common control is a way for organizations to deduplicate the requirements across multiple different frameworks. So at AWS, we have this framework called Working Backwards, where we work backwards from the customer problem. So we have been hearing from our customers that, at Audit Manager, you automate the evidence collection across cloud. Great. But what about common controls? So these customers have spent tons of time and effort in building their own custom common control library, which basically means that these requirements are common across multiple different frameworks that the organization has to adhere to. So with common controls, we are basically allowing customers to really map their custom enterprise control with the AWS compliance data.
So common, meaning it's in both, it's in multiple compliance or regulatory standards that you might be in. And I can see where that would create some headache, right? If I have to do it over here, I don't want to have to redo it over here. I've already done it. So it's common across that. And you've made that easier. And I understand you're going to show us how easy it is. Should we bring your screen on and do a quick little demo?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do
it.
Just
while you're pulling this up, is a good example would be like maybe a hospital who needs to be HIPAA compliant, but also takes credit cards and is responsible for credit card numbers. They would also be in the PCI. So you're saying these common controls would be, let's find the things that are common between HIPAA and PCI. So you only have to collect that evidence once.
Absolutely, bang on. So basically collect once and review once. That's the approach we are following with common control versus the previous approach where they have to collect once, but then they have to review it across many different frameworks.
Gotcha. That's wonderful.
All
So
right.
what are we looking at here, Neha?
So that's the first landing page in Audit Manager. So just to make you comfortable with how Audit Manager looks like, this is the dashboard that we provide to compliance professionals so that they can slice and dice on the various assessments they have. So for example, I have in the drop-down assessments created with PCI or SOC 2, I can just look at what are the controls with non-compliant evidence or how many non-compliant evidence I have. In the left-hand navigation tab is where we have the framework library. Today, Audit Manager provides 32 plus frameworks. These include the standard security frameworks, like we mentioned. It also includes AWS specific frameworks, like the foundational best practices, NIST, SOC 2, and then the recently launched generative AI frameworks for Amazon SageMaker and Bedrock. Let's talk about the showstopper, the common control library. So each framework, what you look at, basically, as you can see, will have hundreds of controls in it. Now, when we go to the control library in Audit Manager, you can see the common control library for any customer who basically uses this Audit Manager. It will serve as a self-serve tool for compliance professional, because these common controls will speak the exact language what customers or these compliance professionals speak in their organization. So yeah, this is how customers can use it. They can come to our control library. We provide different filters. For example, let's say as a customer, I want to look at controls related to data protection. And within data protection, I'm specifically looking for controls which relate to data encryption. So when I filter these down, I see there are 3 common controls which are related to data encryption and data protection. Under each common control are core controls, or basically you can think of as the controls which help you to map it to different data sources in AWS. So you can think of it as a 5-level hierarchy. On the top is the domains, under which we have the control objectives, under which we have common controls, and then of course we have controls which will map it to various resources in AWS side. Let me quickly show you how a control detail will look like. So when I open a common control, this is where as a customer, I can read what this common control do. So what is the main agenda or goal? Underneath, I can see the various controls which are mapped to data sources, basically from where this common control would bring the evidence back to the customer. And when I open the related requirement, as a customer, I can actually see this common control is actually a requirement in various frameworks in HIPAA, frameworks in CIS side, and various requirements in the NIST 800. So customers can really look at those common control and make those connections for different frameworks that they have.
You took the question right out of my mouth. I was like, how do we know that it's common, and where are the compliance that these map to? And this is, you know, what I really like about this demo so far that I've seen it is that it's very intuitive, it's very simple. There's not a bunch of things to configure. There's not a bunch of calls to action I've got to decipher. It very clearly states these are the controls, and then you can click into those and start to understand where those controls are mapped. And we want to know if our audience has any questions for Neha. We're live right now, so if you have a question, we can get it answered from an expert at AWS. Go ahead.
Yeah, or have you ever, let us know your experience. Have you ever been in that audit room across the table from a PCI auditor asking for your evidence and asking to prove how many times, to prove that your ESXi hosts change admin passwords every 3 months?
Right.
Tell us how that went. But Neha, I wanted to ask you, you gave a good example of a control, encrypted data.
Yes.
So, but I imagine that all of these frameworks are written by different people. So that encrypted data might be worded slightly different in PCI speak versus NIST speak. How did AWS come and figure all these common, like what was common, being that we probably couldn't just search for data encryption, because you'd have to really look through all these and know each one of these frameworks?
Yeah, that's a fair question. So what we did is we worked extensively with security assessors, internal AWS auditors, and compliance professionals in the security assurance team within AWS to kind of identify these common requirements across different frameworks, and then really map these requirements up to the data source level, where we are saying that, for S3 bucket, this is the requirement, this is the config rule that should be mapped to this control. So that's how we came up with this whole library.
So it sounds like a lot of pre-work to help all of those compliance organizations that probably would have had to have done that before this. Hopefully this is saving them all some time. So that's wonderful.
Yeah. One of the biggest... Yes, please go ahead.
I was going to say, we've only got just a few minutes left in this segment. I want to make sure we get to all of your demo. What is there anything else that you've got for us?
There is actually one other thing that I wanted to say, that one of the biggest benefit we have for large organizations is that they can actually use this common control as a data source. So let me show you how customers would come to Audit Manager and create a custom control, because a lot of time they have custom requirement based on their unique needs. So a customer can come to create custom control flow. Let's say I want to create encryption control test. I provide the detail for my custom control. If I have a description, I'll provide what this control will do. How will my team test this control, whether it's compliant or not compliant? When I click on next, this is a view that has been changed with the launch of common controls. So as a compliance professional, you can come here and then you can simply choose, let's say I search for encrypt. So encrypt data at rest is a common control. I can simply choose it as a data source for my custom control. Since this common control will already come with pre-built mappings for the data source, as a compliance professional, I don't need to worry about all those, what happens at the AWS specific level. I can just choose multiple common controls that can be used as the data source. As a compliance professional, I can stop here. But if there is a technical team in the GRC side, let's say the security engineers, they can even go one layer down and they can specify specifically, let's say, S3 bucket. So let me search for, again, encryption. And I want to specifically ensure that I enable my S3 buckets. So I can choose this as a data source control for my custom control. We also provide more. You can consider it as Lego boxes. So we can also provide customers to choose their own managed data source. For example, a customer has a custom config rule created that they are managing, or a SecHub control or an API call. They can really choose from these multiple options and define it as a data source for their custom control. So in the API, I can choose the different APIs that we offer from where we'll go and collect the evidence. For example, let's say config describe rule. As a customer, I can define how frequently Audit Manager should go and collect that evidence using this API. So I can define the cadence and then just add it as a data source. And similarly, I can also add a manual data source, because you must be aware that a lot of these requirements also require customers to upload policies or some screenshots or some architecture diagrams. So that's where they can also create just a manual data source and add it as a data source. So that's all. This is the kind of flexibility we are trying to provide these customers. When they create next, they can just review it and create this custom control. And then they can use this custom control by making it part of any framework that they want. And this will go and collect evidence as customers has defined.
That's cool. So common controls become more common because now you can define your own controls, use those common controls as evidence. So if you're building your own compliance requirements or your own audit requirements, you can use these as sources. But a ton of flexibility beyond the common control, manual APIs. That's really slick, and I like how you did that. Now, are there you did this all through the AWS console. You're logged into your AWS console. You're walking through. Are there ways to do this programmatically? I know a lot of times we're doing infrastructure as code and we want to launch our compliance. Is there a way to do it that way?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So customers can use it via the CLI or SDK, and we provide tons of API support as well for Audit Manager. So all these controls or frameworks within Audit Manager can be accessed by customers using the APIs that we have. And we do see large organizations mostly using these API supports to create assessments in their organization and to collect these evidence. So there are multiple ways customer can use it.
Yeah. So, Todd, I liked your point beforehand. We were kind of focusing this on passing the audit. But the other use cases, if maybe you're not part of the PCI industry, but you have a security team that wants to audit things and do your own auditing, self-auditing. This is going to help with that as well, and probably be a low barrier of entry to that, because that might at first, if you're not doing any auditing, and then the CIO says, "Hey, we need to start this." That seems kind of scary, but this tool is going to help you get going really quickly with.
Well, I saw that you had generative AI frameworks in there, so being we talk about that a lot, and being compliant with that and using that responsibly, I think that's good for folks. And I can tell you, going into this segment, you said audit, I got really triggered. I was like, I don't know, man, this is scary stuff. But after watching you, Neha, this is I feel a lot better. I feel at ease, and so thank you so much for coming on and showing us this new feature. We hope to have you back. I can't wait to see what else you do.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah,
thanks,
great.
Neha.
Have a good weekend, Neha.
All right, so hey, let's plug that survey really quick. Todd, I talked about it last time. Tell our listeners about the survey.
Everybody, please take the survey. I am on a mission to break the world record for the number of surveys that we've done on AWS OnAir. So if you've got just a few minutes, 2 minutes, you can go to the link on the screen and complete our survey. The first 50 folks are going to get $10 in AWS credits. And I will sleep very well tonight knowing that I broke the record for survey. So please fill out the survey.
Jump on the train and fill out the survey.
Yeah, everybody's doing it. Everybody. It's cool to fill out surveys. In case you didn't know, get on the train and fill out the survey. So we've got one more segment, Jeff. The best... all the segments that we have today are great, but one of my favorite segments, the thing I look forward to every week I do this show, we're bringing on Mr. Jeff Barr. Should we bring on the man, the myth, the legend?
What's really interesting is when I joined AWS 4 years ago, I didn't ever think I'd ever, number one, get to meet Jeff Barr, but then regularly talk to him to hear his thoughts on what's cool with AWS. So I love this section. So let's bring it in.
Mr. Jeff, are you there?
Hey, Jeff. Hey, Todd. How you guys doing today?
Good. You took the red pill, it looks like.
I did. I have a controllable window here, so I can do anything I want. I have an entire Stream Deck full of cool stuff I can put on.
I think I know Kung Fu now.
I know.
We can just, if our audience is old enough, they might remember one of these famous screensavers.
Wonderful. So, Jeff, every week or almost every week, you come on and give us some of your thoughts on some of the coolest stuff that you've seen be announced or released recently. What do you have for us and our listeners this week?
All right. I've got 3 really cool things. The first one is a really nice update to the IAM Access Analyzer. So I've written about this tool a couple times. I think we've even talked about it here, but it's a tool that helps our customers to use IAM safely and efficiently. And last year we added this awesome piece to it called the Unused Access Analyzer. And what this does exactly what it says on the label. It looks for your roles and looks at your roles and your users, looking for any permissions that you gave to a user or put in a role that aren't actually used, and with the thinking that, okay, maybe you were a little bit too generous with your permissions, and you want to kind of put a fence around things and just get more control over your permissions. So you don't need those extra permissions, and you should get rid of them. And we also, last year, we had this thing called custom policy checks. And what this is that when you're about to deploy some new IAM policy, you have an API and a command line tool where you can say, take this new policy and this existing one and effectively logically compare them and make sure that the new one doesn't accidentally give some new unintended permissions that the old one did not. So the thinking is that you might want to use these in your CI/CD pipeline to protect against accidentally putting out a new permission that gives something that you really didn't need to have as part of your production environment. So none of that's new, but what actually is new, we added 2 new custom policy checks and also made it easier for once the Access Analyzer finds out that you have some extra permissions, make it easier to cleanly revoke those. So the 2 new custom policy checks And the names are pretty obvious here. The first one is called check no public access. And let me fully explain what this one does. It checks to make sure that a policy doesn't actually grant any public access, right? Pretty obvious. So you can operate this from the API or from the command line, because the idea is you're going to be using these not with some policy you've already actually loaded up into IAM, but you want to do it while you've still got that policy basically in dev and ready to go. And the second one is kind of interesting. It's called check access not granted. And the thinking here is that you've got some set of AWS resources, like your super critical ones, like at the core of everything. And so you want to like protect those absolutely. And so you use this this check to say, make sure that this new policy does not touch, for example, these APIs and or these resources or these accesses. So you can protect the most critical parts of your infrastructure. So those are the two new checks, the no public access and the access not granted. But the next cool thing is what we call guided revocation. So after the access analyzer has looked at your permissions and it says, hey, by the way, you're too generous here and too generous over there, the guided revocation actually says, okay, Todd, okay, Jeff, this is how you actually can go about resolving these findings. And so it might say, well, you've got these access keys you're not using, here's how to delete them, or you've got these policies that give too much access, and it'll say, here's exactly what to do step by step to actually create new policies that are less permissive and do exactly what's needed. And you can, of course, with the access analyzer, you can also archive these findings and put them like in the storage shed, basically. There's a whole blog post about this that I wrote. I think I published that one early this week. Today's Friday, right?
That's right.
Yes, it is, yeah.
Really long.
I think that's what they tell me. I don't know.
Yeah. Way back in the distant past on Monday, we published this post about the IAM Access Analyzer. So we'll drop a link on that one. Now the second one, so that's like a big thing, I think. So that's giving you better control of your permissions.
We talk all the time about the concept of least privilege, and that sounds easy when you say it and you talk about it, but actually practicing it and confirming that's a whole nother story. And sounds like this tool is helping you confirm it and take action to make sure you're doing that.
Exactly. Yeah. The second one is not nearly so dramatic, but I think it's pretty cool. So when you're using CloudFormation, you can create there's a ton of coverage inside CloudFormation of many different AWS resource types, but our customers can also create their own custom CloudFormation resources, either for things that we haven't added coverage for yet, or for their own elements that they want to deploy via a template. So what you can now do, and this sounds almost trivial, but it's actually a really cool thing. You can now set a service timeout property when you create these custom resources. And what this helps with is that when CloudFormation is going through your template and creating these resources, it calls your code to say, go ahead and create this new resource. And then it's very patient. Like you're just like standing there at that train station waiting for the train that's super late. It'll wait for an entire hour waiting for that train to show up. But it turns out that most of these things actually, if your custom resource is going to fail, it's probably going to fail pretty quickly. And so basically what you can do is say, okay, just wait a much shorter amount of time. So you can set a custom timeout value. So you can basically stay on schedule and don't go off the rails, as they say. So I like this because it's faster for your dev and test. It kind of says you get a little bit less time to kind of like, quote, goof off while you're waiting for your resources to deploy, right? Because if you want to just stay focused, you don't want to kind of go off the tracks. You're kind of just sitting there just waiting for the thing to deploy and test. But CloudFormation adjustable timeouts, we'll drop a link to the what's new in there. So I like that one a lot as well. And it's funny how sometimes, as we've talked about before, sometimes these relatively simple additions to AWS can be a really big deal for our customers. And it always shows how we're not just, yes, we launch these big kind of epic moves forward, but we also go back and fill in the little interesting spaces between them to make sure that we're really giving our customers a good experience. What do you think about that one?
I like that one a lot. I can tell you, as a developer, as a cloud architect, I've spent a lot of time waiting for, I mean, because when I'm actively developing, debugging, working through something, I want it to fail fast so I can remediate and move forward. So the idea that I can now adjust that and not have to sit there and wait for it to fail and then unwind, and then I think that's one of the worst parts of doing that work. So I think that one's really cool. I like that.
Yeah. Okay. I've just got one more. So if you've heard me talk about services before, sometimes we'll do a launch and we call it the chocolate and the peanut butter, which brings back very, very good memories of an ancient TV commercial of one kid going one direction with his chocolate and another one going the other direction with his peanut butter, and they're not looking, they smash in, and suddenly like, hey, peanut butter and chocolate taste great together. Well, I watched way too much TV when I was a kid. So that I still, whenever I see interesting combinations, I always think chocolate and peanut butter. So in this case, peanut butter is Amazon S3. And I think of S3 as the peanut butter because your objects tend to stick around once you put them in the bucket. And of course, our audience probably knows S3 because it's got storage right now. It's got hundreds of trillions of objects in S3. And the chocolate in this case is Amazon Guard Duty. And Guard Duty is a scanner for malware. And it gives our customers threat detection for their accounts, their workloads, and their data. The latest stats is it's protecting millions of S3 buckets and AWS accounts. Okay, so we've already got both of those. And Guard Duty already knows how to protect S3. That's really, really cool. But what's awesome and new is that they kind of crashed into each other like two trains going down the same track with bad signaling. And as they crash into each other, you can now enable the malware protection for new uploads to your S3 bucket. So maybe you have a bucket where it might be public upload, but more likely you're doing something like maybe your like business trading partners upload documents to your bucket so you can process them. Maybe they're purchase orders, and then you want to like actually do something with them. Well, by accident, some malware could get embedded in one of those documents. And so the Guard Duty malware protection can now be activated for these new uploads to the bucket. And what is also I like about this is you can use it without actually enabling it for your whole account, which might be just a little bit of overkill. So you can do it just for uploads, and you can do it even for a subset of objects in a bucket as defined by a prefix. So it's going to check the new objects as they come in for malware. If it finds some malware, it's going to generate an event bridge notification, and then you can move it into a bucket, kind of move it off onto a siding, if you will, or you could tag it to stop your users from accessing it. So your choice and your code for how you'd like to process that. It's priced per gigabyte of objects scanned and the number of objects evaluated per month. You get 1,000 requests and a gigabyte per month for 12 months as part of the AWS free tier. We will drop a link into it. And that is about all I've got for today. I'm just wrapping up here at the desk. I'm going to take a week off to just chill and do a whole lot of nothing for a bit. So I won't be around next week, but I will be back with extra goodies on, that is the calendar say, on the 28th. I'll be back.
Nice. Yeah, and I know having watched some of the reinforced sessions this week, that malware still a thing, still a very still very much of a concern. So I like that feature. And the other thing, Jeff, I want to mention, I do one of the best ways that you can track some of Jeff's updates, I know I do, is on LinkedIn. I follow your goodies segment often. Whenever you're coming in, and one of the things you posted recently on your goodies is the video summarizer app, which is an idea I've had floated around in my app or in my mind. So be sure to check out Jeff's LinkedIn goodies. He posts that regularly. Yeah, thanks, Jeff, for your updates this week.
Thanks for reading those, Todd. They've actually been quite successful. There's really, with every social network, you've got various challenges with the algorithms that they use to determine how much of your content is spread around. And I found that with a lot of them, posting once per day is about right. Like if you try to go multiple times per day on some of the networks, it'll say like, "Hey, slow down! You're going too fast on this." And so by accumulating several things into one goodies post, it seems to get better exposure than the individual ones do.
It's the right amount of information. I know that like there's this short form media explosion, right? We live in the world of short form media, TikTok, shorts, Instagram. And so a lot of people are looking for those bite-sized chunks of information. And so I think the goodies provide just the right amount of information to see what's new. And then you can kind of explore further on your own. And that's what I like about it. So
cool.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thanks for putting that out. Yeah.
So, it's always great to put that together. And what I actually find fascinating is how much of this originates outside of AWS, whether it's content or sample code or things from our marketplace or just stuff I just find. And I basically have little just tendrils out where I'm just looking for all different kinds of things everywhere possible. And I subscribe to way too many feeds and mailing lists and alerts just so I can try to stay aware of. I wouldn't stay on top of, because there's way too much to ever stay on top of.
Yeah, there is so much. It can be overwhelming.
It's impossible.
There are just like really bright people at AWS coming up with really great ideas, and they're always launching them. And we encourage that. It's one of the things I love about working here is that if I've got a good idea, I don't have to sit around and wait for somebody else to do it. I can do it. And I've got so many different outlets to get that idea out, whether that's through GitHub and AWS samples, whether that's the solutions library, or even through this show, right? So, it's a lot of stuff, new stuff coming out of AWS. And got dogs in the background.
They're saying, "Come on, let's go, let's wrap it up."
They don't like when folks come to the house, and that's precisely why I have them, to be honest with you. But I was going to say, actually, if you want to stay on top of what's happening at AWS, make sure you turn in every week to this show, AWS OnAir, live on Friday every week. Jeff, thanks for coming on.
Anytime. Good to see you. I'll be skipping next week, but I'll be back on the 28th.
Hey, enjoy your time off.
Enjoy.
Definitely.
And to all of our viewers, thanks for tuning in for this week's episode. Todd, thank you very much for having me as your co-host, and look forward to hosting with you again, man. It's been great.
Yeah, it's good to see you again, Jeff. I think some really cool demos today, and I will hopefully...
Hey, really quick, are you going to the DC Summit?
I don't know yet. There's a chance. I know my team will be there. Whether or not I will be there is still up for. I'm more likely the New York Summit, but we're gonna find out. I'm assuming you're gonna be there.
Well, I am. So I wasn't planning on it until one of my sessions got approved. We're going to be talking about the Air Force Sustainment Center and how they're modernizing logistics. And it's actually one of the first breakout sessions Wednesday, because DC Summit is Wednesday and Thursday. So Wednesday morning at 9:30, I'll be talking. We'll have like a little panel session with some of my customers that I help to support out of the Air Force Sustainment Center, talking about logistics and modernizing stuff there. So
Nice.
Our viewers, if you happen to be at the DC Summit, come and find me. And, Todd, hopefully you get to come and we get to hang out some more.
Yeah, I'm already thinking reInvent. I got my reInvent replay shirt from last year's reInvent. I know they opened up registration. So I'm thinking reInvent. I'm thinking summits. It's an exciting time right now. We're all kicking into gear, getting ready for these big events. So yeah, definitely come find us. If you're at any of these events, hit us up on LinkedIn, and we'd love to say hi.
All right, great.
Hey, thanks, Jeff. Well, till next time.
We'll see you guys. Thanks.
Have a great weekend.